Well, before the break, we were talking about an email I got from a listener who said that, gosh, they found some paraphernalia, some things that indicated that one of their family members who they are living with in the same household has been dabbling in the occult, more specifically in Satanism. They noticed that not only was there a Ouija board, but there were also some very specific satanic symbols, metals, crystals, things of that nature in their room. And they're going, what's going on with this? And they also noticed that at that time, this family member is not getting along with him. It was a cousin. They're not getting along with him quite as well. And in their own life, they started to feel darkness. Well, before the break, we said, what do we do when we stumble across something like this? If there is a family member or somebody who we know who is using this, and we see that this stuff, we naturally should have a repulsion to it. We naturally should have a sense of get away from it, almost as if you came across a poisonous snake, a big lion who was about to attack you. You don't think twice. You don't say, well, gee, is that lion? Maybe he just needs to talk. Maybe he's just needs to be petted. No, we know instinctively this is nothing good. This is 100% danger, and we're out of there. This animal does not have my best interests at heart at all, right? So we have to understand that part first. But I said, what happens if all of a sudden when we're in there, we don't become scared and we actually become curious? And we actually start to wonder, wait, what is all this? I need to learn more about this so that I can combat it. We don't. It's naturally to fall into that, natural to fall into that sin of curiosity, if you will. Um, and to look at it and think, just like with a big lion, well, I want to find out more about the lion. Maybe I can control the lion. Maybe I can be powerful enough to control this beast. Or the snake isn't so bad. I've seen snake tamers, and I've seen lions being controlled at the zoos, right? Or at the say a circus. They have all these lions sitting around, and the lion tamers there. Well, folks, that's not going to be us when it comes to these things. I would never encourage anybody to dabble in it. So if we become curious about it, I would say be cautious. Walk away as soon as possible. Switch the brain. Fight our own temptations or thoughts to go learn more about it or to think more about it. What I would say is, more than anything else, what we really have to be aware of is I don't have the angelic nature to know how to fight that. And it's not my battle at that time. I have to trust in God. So, what would I recommend to anybody who does this or who stumbles upon this? The first thing is get out of there and go pray. Okay? Leave all that stuff, even if it's in the room. One of the questions is, can I possibly be cursed? Sure, we can all, our curse is real. Absolutely. Are they going to affect me? Not necessarily. Well, how can you say that, Dr. Sandoval? If they're cursing me, I'm so scared now because I think they put a curse on me. And I think that that's why I've been feeling dark. I think that's why we're not getting along. I think this is where we got to take a step back and not fall into that self fulfilling prophecy I was talking about earlier. We stumble across something like this and we're going to say, oh, I knew it because of this. Now there's going to be darkness in my life. Or, wow, now I notice that that's why they moved across the room the other day. Wow, they're really standing, they never leave their phone there on the table and they did. Or, normally they seem more talkative and now they're not talking to me. It's because of all this. It's easy to get scared and scandalized and make that conclusion, but that's just as good as going to a psychic or reading a horoscope and saying, oh my goodness, my horoscope said this, so it's bound to happen, or the psychic said this, so now I got to be careful. We never want to fall into that trap. I got to take a step back and realize it doesn't matter if the gates of hell are right next to my room. God is still in charge. We give the devil too much credit sometimes not enough. And let's explain the difference. Well, gee, Dr. Sandoval, when do we give it too much credit and when do we give the demons not enough credit? What do you mean by that? Sometimes when we get so overwhelmed that we're worried that we're going to be cursed or this is going to influence our lives, it's easy to forget, and I fall into this trap sometimes too. It's easy to forget that no, the devil can't do more than what God allows him to do. That's the first thing we have to remember. So, whose side are we on? I'm on God's side. And if I trust God and I say, God, whatever's happening in my life, I offer to you. You're the one who's allowing things to happen in my life or not happen in my life. You're the one in charge of that. That's where we got to put our Catholic thinking, right? We got to think like Catholics, to live like Catholics, to be Catholic. We got to start thinking like Catholic and realize that God's not ever going to leave us. God's not ever going to stop loving us. And if something's happening in my life, it's only because God is continually preparing me to meet him. That's really all this time on earth is am I prepared to meet God? Am I preparing myself to meet God? So, stumbling across these things in my cousin's room or say somewhere in a store or something, how is this preparing me to meet God? Maybe God is reminding me that, hey, you got to work extra hard to make sure that you don't fall into these traps. Don't go read about that. If I saw that or if I was influenced by that, boy, I need to go ahead and read my Bible, get back into the Word of God. I need to get to confession. Do I need to get to confession? Maybe God's reminding me that. This is the way God reminded me that don't forget there's stuff out there that's going to want to bring you down. You better go prepare. Go to confession, go receive communion, live a sacramental life, put the Eucharist first in your life. And that's really what you need. Anything else that happens around there, that's up to God. I could easily read into things. I could easily start to say, yeah, my cousin's not talking to me now. Now I know why, because they're, no, maybe they're just having a bad day. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people. This is one of the points I want to make here is there are a lot of people dabbling in the occult and you're not even aware of it. There's a lot of people out there who are influenced by these things or who choose to do these things, people who might even be going to church with us. It's very common in different cultures. Coming from the Hispanic culture, so common. You go to mass on Sunday, and right after mass, you got to go to your psychic, and somebody's going to read your tarot cards. You know, very common. We mix that a lot in the culture. Unfortunately, a lot of times due to ignorance, a lot of times due to lack of faith, because we feel like God's not working fast enough in my life, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to listen to somebody else who might give me more immediate information that I'm going to hold on to. That's not coming from God. But this is where we got to ask ourselves, where do I put my faith? So the first thing is when I see these things, I don't want to get scandalized. I don't want to fall into the trap of curiosity. Um, and I want to make sure that I want to be kind to my cousin. I don't want to change anything I do with my cousin. I want to treat them the same way because when the conversation comes up, and it might, of the occult, what if all of a sudden your cousin down the road or your family member comes up to you and says, hey, why don't we have you heard of this? Maybe you should, look into some of this stuff. Maybe you should read your horoscope. Maybe you should look at some of these things that I have. Is that possible? Sure, it's possible. They can easily want you to do that. Is that something that we would recommend? Of course not. But are you prepared to have that conversation? Are you prepared to take that step back and say, no, I don't think so. I don't want to delve into that at all. Do we have that fortitude? It's hard to say, right? Because now that we've been presented with this stuff, it might be a preparation because we might have to have a talk with this person. Hopefully, we stumble across this and we do a few things. This is my official recommendation. One, get away from that. Two, start praying, right? Why are we scandalized by this? Because all of a sudden the reality of good and evil is brought before our eyes. And are we ready to turn to evil and turn away from evil and turn to the good and have a peace about ourselves? Are we ready to turn and say, you know what? Whenever I see this, I'm just going to pray. And I'm not going to let it shake me at my core. I'm not going to let it influence me that way, right? Why? Why would I say that? Because I want to make sure that I'm always ready to pray. Believe it or not, sometimes we get comfortable in our homes, and this might be a way of God telling us, don't get too comfortable. It's all around you, even where you least expect it, right? Even you don't expect it in your family members or someone you grew up with or a good friend. You don't expect to see evil there, but it can happen, and maybe God's telling you you should always be prepared to turn to prayer. Maybe have we been good in our prayer lives? Are we always turning to God every day? Those are the big questions that I would have first of all.